All right, how you guys doing today? We about to hop into the review of Proverbs chapter 21, the second part. The first things first, I just want to make sure y'all like that video up, hit a like to full screen, scroll a bit, like it, and then full screen it back up. You feel me? So once again, I apologize for the messy room. You know, the greatest part about being home on summer vacation is I don't have anything mentally in my mind other than I gotta submit some timesheets from the work that I did over the semester. But other than that, my mind is free. I don't have to wake up for anything. I don't have to do anything. Right, and that is until I start working again. But we about to head out of the state in a couple of days, so I'm not working until I get back from that. So, I'm just chilling, sleeping 12 plus hours a day, which is crazy because I think it was in our last video where we talked about not our last video, but the last review of one of the proverbs that we talked about not sleeping so much. That was back in chapter 20. Anyway, we left back on verse 10. The soul of the wicked desires evil. His neighbor finds no favor in his eyes. Right? So the soul of the wicked, they want evil things, right? We see this. It tells us to stay away from wicked people, people that tell lies, people that tell secrets, all these types of things. So it's the same way we can see the soul of the wicked, they desire evil things. Same way that he says stay away from different types of people, you can just put two and two together and say you should stay away from these people as well, right? But his neighbor finds no favor in his eyes. We're going to check what that specifically means through this little commentary here. The evil that marks the wicked is expressed in their inability to get along with a neighbor. They look upon everyone else with no favor in their eyes. We should be careful of those who can't get along with other people. And we see this so common day to day in our lives with people that can't stay out of drama or can't seem to keep themselves away from it. They're always attracting things, and right, and it's always what other people are doing wrong. It's never about what they do, but like the saying goes, right? If it's always somebody else, or what's that saying? I can't think of it, but it's something along the lines of, if you keep finding yourself in a situation, or if there's so many problems in your life, eventually you have to look at like, are you the problem? You have to take a step back and take an objective look. Maybe you're the problem. If it seems that drama keeps flocking to you, or these problems keep flocking to you, maybe it's not them, maybe it's not everything else, maybe it's just you, right? But his neighbor finds no favor in his eyes. These people that desire evil, and the presence of evil stems from not loving your neighbor as yourself, right? Because to love everybody and to love God, you would love your neighbor as yourself, right? Therefore, somebody who's evil doesn't love their neighbor as himself, and everybody in their eyes finds no favor because they're so focused on this evil. They're so focused on doing wrong that they just can't have anybody else look upon them favorably, right? They just do evil to everybody. They don't love their neighbors themselves. Therefore, they find no favor in their eyes. Verse 11. When the scorner is punished, the simple is made wise. The simple is made wise. When the wise is instructed, he receives knowledge. And he mentioned in the sermon how he doesn't watch the news anymore because it's just so many people who scorn and so many people who scoff at so many different things, right? And what do we see? That's a lack of loving your neighbor as yourself, right? Scorning other people, being scornful and scoffing at other people and laughing and mocking and all these types of things. That's a lack of loving your neighbor. But specifically in this, it's talking about when a scorner is punished, a simple person, right? Somebody who doesn't know better is made wise because they see this punishment and they think, oh, I don't want to do that. So I see this punishment and I make sure that, oh, I'm not going to do that, right? They learn from seeing the punishment. However, when a wise person is instructed, they receive that knowledge just by being told, right? They take that in and they deep it inside their hearts versus seeing something that comes with a negative connotation to it, right? A consequence in a negative sense. They see that. They don't need to see that, right? They see somebody, the simple people see people get punished and realize that it's best not to do that. A wise person just needs to get told and they understand, right? Verse 12. A righteous man wisely considers the house of the wicked, but God overthrows the wicked for their wickedness. Right? So the righteous man, he wisely considers the house of the wicked. He's going to be able to spot that through discernment, through the power of the Holy Spirit, right? We're going to be able to know, hey, I got to stay away from this. I'm not supposed to be near that. And that comes a lot with our temptations and our own convictions, right? When we know what's right and what's wrong for us as people, because not only maybe our conscience or a moral compass inside of us that's placed by God, don't get that messed up. God put that there for a reason, right? So that we would know right from wrong and we would not be without excuse, right? Anyway, so whether it be by that, by conviction of the Holy Spirit, or just by the power of discernment, knowing, hey, I've fallen to this sin before, Or, hey, I can recognize this as a weak point in my life. I need not to go near that, right? We can consider the house of the wicked, and God is going to overthrow that wicked for their own wickedness in the end times, more so to speak. But at the same time, even if that's overthrowing it from your life, right? If you trust in God, trust in the Holy Spirit working inside of you, that wickedness that lives inside of you in your sinful fleshly nature is going to get overthrown outside of your body through the power of God. Verse 13, whoso stops his ears at the cries of the poor, he also shall cry himself, but shall not be heard. Right. And I believe this isn't somebody saying who stops his ears at the cry of the poor. At first, I thought this to mean like, oh, he who stops when he hears somebody cries and he goes to help them. I was like, wait, he's not going to be heard. But it's somebody who stops his ears at the cry of the poor. Like, oh, poor man's crying. La di da di da. You know what I'm saying? They just go on their way and they don't help them. Right. He is eventually going to cry himself and shall not be heard, right? And this more so just comes with this you sow what you reap type of thing. It's not a promise, it's just an observation of Solomon, if you get what I'm saying. Verse 14, a gift in secret pacifies anger, and a reward in the bosom, strong wrath. And it seems to be that this is just talking about bribes and the effectiveness of them, right? They can seek to pacify anger and they can work, and they can also seem to stop strong wrath. And it's not necessarily praising them, more so just pointing out that, hey, they seem to work some of the time, if not most of the time. Because, who's going to turn down a little extra money on the side? You tell somebody, hey, I know you're just doing your job and you're getting paid hourly. I'm going to pay you extra to act like you ain't see what I just did. And then you're thinking in your head, I get paid hourly and I get paid from this guy. And that's less work and paperwork I have to do. Let's say if you're a cop or for whatever, and you realize I don't have to do all the paperwork that comes with arresting somebody. I'm still getting paid by the hour. And this guy just paid me extra money too. Sounds good to me, right? And then, you just kind of go on your way. Verse 15, it is joy to the just to do judgment, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. And, it's pretty simple, right? It's going to be happy. You're going to feel, or my bad, you're going to feel happy. You're going to be happy to do judgment. But destruction is going to come upon people who do evil. This is just saying, right? God is going to fuel us with joy when we do what's best in accordance with his will. But destruction will be for the workers of iniquity on the last day. Facts. Verse 16, the man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. Pretty straightforward, right? If you're not living in understanding or wisdom, you're not living with Jesus, and therefore you shall also remain in the congregation of the dead. Verse 17, he that loves pleasure shall be a poor man. He that loves wine and oil shall not be rich, right? And we were talking about this a little bit ago. My screen's just blacked out. That was interesting. Right, we were talking about this a little bit ago where I was mentioning how I'm doing this business with some of my friends and they were talking about, oh yeah, money's good and money's this, and they think money can buy or whatever, rent happiness. And I think it can rent happiness for sure, but it's not something you can buy and own, right? You can't have a stake in happiness and you can't continuously own happiness because it's going to be thrown off by different things. However, joy from the Lord is something different that can be ever present, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to be happy all the time, but it means that you have a rock on which you can be happy all the time if you know where to look. And it doesn't require you having money to buy it. It doesn't require you having anything really. It just requires you having your free thinking mind and choosing to trust in Jesus Christ and be happy with that. Right? So the love, or where were we at? Because it messed up my thing. He that loves pleasure shall be a poor man, right? Somebody who loves pleasure, they're going to keep spending it. They're going to keep spending it, right? They could have been stacking their money and making it generational wealth and all this type of stuff, but instead they're squandering it. And right, we see this is common with people who have addictions such as gambling, right? Eventually, they run out of money. People with alcohol, they love that pleasure, they're going to run out of money. People with drug addictions, they're going to run out of money, right? And if you love wine and oil, I don't really know what it means by oil. I'm just talking about like Diddy, right? But, all right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. But like I just said, right, alcohol and then oil. I gotta look. I don't know what it's trying to say. In this proverb, wine and oil represent the luxuries of life. There's an appropriate way to enjoy wine and oil without setting one's heart on them. But if these are loved beyond proper measure, it's a pathway to poverty. Anyway, you get the point. Verse 18: the wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the transgressor for the upright. And this is basically just saying, apparently, that the righteous will ultimately succeed and triumph over the wicked. And a ransom, a metaphor like this, should not, or the metaphor should not be pushed to walk on all fours by asking to whom the ransom is paid. God often in his judgment cuts off the wicked to prevent them from destroying the righteous. And in general, we find that the wicked fall into the traps and pits they have digged for the righteous. So the wicked man shall be a ransom for the righteous. They're going to sell the wicked man to get the righteous. That kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? Selling the wicked man to get to the righteous. Like, so many people have to see negative in their lives, right? Like we just saw with the simple person who's going to see the punishment, they're going to walk in the right path after that because they see, I don't want to get this punishment done to me. So in the same way, it could be the wicked man is going to be the ransom for the righteous man. There's got to be good and there's got to be evil, right? One cannot exist truly without the other one. Therefore, there's got to be some wicked man who falls so a righteous man can be uplifted, if that makes sense. Now, I don't know if that's what this is necessarily talking about. This isn't really getting too deep into it, but I like to think what I'm saying is making some kind of sense, and y'all could tell me if I'm wrong. But regardless of the fact, the righteous will ultimately triumph over the wicked, and the unfaithful for the upright. God promises in the end, all the righteous and upright will be lifted above the wicked and unfaithful. It is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman. And do we even need to comment on that? Like, it can go both ways, though, man. Don't even trip. You know what I'm saying? Ladies, it's good to recognize the importance of having a man who doesn't have a short temper, right? Somebody who's not getting mad all the time. That was something that I used to have, right? I used to have a very short temper, and I used to think it was cool to have a short temper. I used to be like, nah, I'd be getting mad, and I'd be getting angry, and I'd be getting peed off, and all these types of things. And it was just like, what are you bragging about? What good does that do? You're mad. Like, literally, I don't know if you can see it right here, but I got some holes in my wall from back in the day when I stabbed some pencils into the wall because I was so angry. I couldn't even tell you what I was mad about. There's a vague memory of what I was mad about, but I don't know. My lamp that's over there that I don't think you can see. I remember I threw a book at it, shattered the light bulb because I was mad one time. And there's probably some random other things that are reminiscent of when I was mad, but even then I didn't really know how to control my anger, and that was another bad thing in my life. Because right, it's one thing to just be angry, but it's another thing to not know how to control that, right? And there's healthy ways, right? Even if you have a short temper, but like, you know, to trust God, you know, to pray, it's like, okay, maybe that's not a negative thing. However, you have a short temper mixed with physical outbursts, right? That's when it becomes a problem because you don't know what's liable to be attacked next or to be damaged in that type of sense, right? Because you don't really have control over your emotions. And we were just talking about this, a few of my friends, how it's not good to pick a man, or, well, I wouldn't want a girl that cries all the time, right? But it's not good to pick a man that cries all the time. Because, like, I think of crying as an emotional outburst that shows that you can't really control yourself. And it's okay to cry every once in a while, right? I think that God instilled a feeling of the release of feel good endorphins, or whatever the word is, when you cry, as, you know, a symbol that it's healthy to some extent. It makes you feel better, but like overdoing that, right? The Bible talks about sensuality and the feeling of pleasure from your senses, and I think that's one of them, is when you overdo it, right? But also shows that, like, I can't control myself, so all I can do is break down and cry. I don't know how to express myself, so I'm just gonna break down and cry. And I don't think that's the healthiest thing to do personally. Now, if you got something you want to say to that in the comments, like, I'm fully open to hearing what you got to say. Because right now, my thought process is just limited by, it seems like, a reaction that's not beneficial in any way, because it kind of takes you out of the equation while you're crying, right? Yeah, I very rarely ever hear of somebody doing something productive while they're crying, right? So it just kind of seems like, I don't know how to control my emotions. I'm going to sit here and cry. And, right, I can't say that I've not fallen victim to that before, right? It's not all the time. It's very rare, in fact, right? I can count on one hand, if not less than one hand, how many times that has happened. But, you know, it's just something to say. It's just to say that I don't think it's something that needs to happen all the time. Because I think it's an emotional response. And instead of dealing with your problems or seeking God, right, you just kind of give up in that moment and succumb to these feelings, which manifests itself in crying. All right, that's going to be the end of the video. Hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.